This is quite a controversial thing to say in a society that's just obsessed with following what feels good and following your heart. And I've heard that so many times when I was in a crash state of my fearful avoidant attachment style, and it was just super confusing and really not helping. Now, as I've healed the fearful avoidant attachment style, looking back at that time, I just want to tell my younger self that this is just not true. And so I'm here telling you and hopefully helping you with all the confusion around this topic, around these phrases. So I always thought that this was just truth. You have to follow what feels good. And so my relationship with Aryan, my then boyfriend, now husband, did not feel good. I was just super scared all the time. I had repulsion. I had so many negative feelings. I sometimes just didn't want to be around him, didn't want to be with him. Um, I had these intense doubts and I was just checking my feelings constantly. And a lot of times I didn't feel anything, or it wasn't enough, it wasn't intense enough. And so I just had the feeling that what I was doing was completely wrong, staying with him. And I was just too scared or too selfish or too weak to break up with him. And that was the only reason that I would stay with him, that I didn't want to be alone because it didn't feel good. And so I thought, my fear brain told me that I had to break up, I had to leave, because you should follow your heart and you should follow what feels good. All right, so let's do a little bit of reality check or truth or whatever you want to call it. First of all, what in heaven's name is feeling good? There are different ways, different types of feeling good. And the only thing I knew then was the dopamine kind of feeling good. I was just so high strung. I was so alert all the time. My fear system was on all the time. That feeling good for me was a dopamine hit, which meant that I felt good in dynamics where I had to work for approval and I had to work for love. And then when I got that love and I got that approval, that felt really good. That almost felt like euphoria. But that was a dopamine hit. That was just hormones releasing and making me feel, how do you explain this? Yeah, euphoria, but also in a very anxious way. Maybe you recognize it. Let me know in the comments below if you recognize, if you know what I'm talking about. So it felt good, but it also felt anxious, and I was always afraid to lose it. I always had a feeling that I had to hold on to that feeling. And the good feeling that I didn't really know back then, and that I am so happy to say I live in now pretty much all the time, is just this very centered peace and calm, which may have sound very boring in the time when I was looking for that dopamine hit, but it is so much more fulfilling and satiating than looking for that dopamine hit. And this feels good too, but it's vastly different from that dopamine hit and being just really happy or almost relieved. It was more, I think, when I got that approval or when I got that love, when I worked for it so hard. So this feels good. This feels calm. This feels like a stable kind of good. I know this unshakable peace that I have won't really go away, even when things happen. It's not anybody else's doing, so it's not that I have to get it from somebody else. And it feels just like home in a way. I feel like I've come home by healing the fearful avoidant attachment style and really coming home in my own body. And that feels better than that dopamine hit could have ever felt. So I do follow this feeling of peace and calm now. Whatever whenever I am not sure about something, which rarely happens now because I just know myself so well, um, I follow whatever feels peaceful, whatever feels calm, and whatever feels expansive. When I feel myself contracting, that is not the way I want to think. That is not the way I want to feel. And so I see what I adjust. And I have to say right now, I might come back to that with some of the other points, but when I was in that crush state, it was very black and white. I think I will come back to this in the last point. It was very black and white. Like, I don't feel good, so I have to break up with this whole relationship. And obviously, there's so much gray area within that, but we will get back to that. So that is the first thing. Dopamine feels good, but that is definitely not something you should follow. And I think a lot of people follow that dopamine hit. A lot of people um, think that is what they mean with follow your heart, and it absolutely is not. It absolutely is not. I'm so I so want to get this point across. I guess I'm so passionate about this because this is just something that is said so often. You have to follow your heart. You have to follow what feels good, and it is often said with the best of intentions, but it is not helping the fearful avoidant at all, because the fearful avoidant is very used to that dopamine hit and having to work for love and having to work for approval. And there is so much more in store for you, my friend, so much more. So that was the first point, which I can talk about for another hour. The second one is that we usually, as fearful avoidants, haven't learned to listen to our bodies and what we need. So this comes back to the point that you probably demand your body to feel a certain way and to work a certain way. For me, this was when I was younger. I wasn't allowed to be tired. I wasn't allowed to be weak. I wasn't allowed to be angry. I wasn't allowed to be emotional. And so I just demanded my body to always have energy and to always be somewhat happy. Not too happy, but somewhat happy. Because that was the only thing that was accepted, the only state of being that was really accepted. And when you do that, when you demand things of your body, you are not listening to your body and what it needs. So I really had to learn to listen to what my body needs. And it might be that is actually frightening for you to hear, because you have so many stories and negative associations attached to feeling and allowing all your feelings to be there. And when I started listening to what I needed more, so needing to just have a moment to myself, or needing to sleep, or needing to eat different things that my body was craving, that really helped so much in allowing all my feelings to be there, allowing myself to have my body go to that state of equilibrium, which is that centered state of calm and peace, which is what everybody has. That is your natural state. This fear that you feel is not your natural state. But what happens when we haven't learned to listen to our own needs and listen to our own bodies, we just suppress everything that's coming up, and we feel very fearful around that because we have attached stories to that. When I feel this, that means this, and then I have to break up with my partner. If I feel anxious, that means I'm not happy in the relationship, and then I have to break up. And so you just suppress everything that you feel because you are afraid that that story is true, and it never is. That really is your fear brain. The third one is something, we believe that something outside of us will make us happy. And I remember reading, I think it was Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle. I'm not quite sure anymore. I think Deepak Chopra. And he said, well, you can be unhappy. And when you have the belief that you have to be happy when you have found the one will make you happy for the rest of your life, then you can sit on the couch, look at your partner, and think, I'm unhappy and we're together, so that must mean that you are not the one. And so then you break up, and it's this whole thing. And then you think that you are going to be happy, but you're sitting on the couch now alone, and you're still just as unhappy. And that was such a pivotal moment for me where I definitely blamed my relationship for any feelings of unhappiness or negative feelings I had. And I think I was living with this fantasy that the right relationship would take away all this pain. It would take away all my trauma. It would take, and I didn't know I had trauma at that point at all. I had no idea. I truly thought it was my relationship. And I had this fantasy that when I would find the one, I would just be happy and they would know my needs instead of me having to know my needs. And they would say exactly the right thing to make me feel good again. And that really truly is just a fantasy. That can't be true, because just imagine that you would have a partner that would only make you feel good, that would take away all the pain, that would know your needs, and you wouldn't have to know your needs. You wouldn't have to express your needs, set up boundaries. You wouldn't have to listen to your own body. You wouldn't have to do what your body is asking for. Just imagine that there is somebody that could do that. You are giving away all of your control in feeling good. That is not sustainable, and that will cause so much anxiety, because what if that person goes away? What if that person dies? What if something happens and you can't be together? Then your complete source of happiness, of love, of self-esteem, of fulfilling your needs falls away. This is not sustainable. You are the only person that will be with you for the rest of your life, 100% guaranteed. And so you are that knight in shining armor. You are the one that can make yourself feel good, that can make yourself feel happy, that can fulfill your own needs, that can decide to feel love, decide to feel happiness in your body. And doing that partly by healing trauma and healing the fearful avoidant attachment style, so that you allow yourself to feel those things. So we are brought up with this idea, and this also comes from movies, that something or someone outside of us will make us happy. If we just find the right person, if we find the right partner, then we will be in a blissful state for the rest of our lives. And this is just not realistic. It's not realistic. And that might sound unromantic, but I want you to experience happiness. I want you to experience true romanticism. Yeah, don't know how to say that. I want you to experience true love. And so believing in that story and that fantasy is not helping you. It's not serving you. There is nothing outside of you that can have full control over how you feel and how happy you are, and over your needs and whether they are fulfilled or not. That's just not. You have way too much power for that. You have way too much power for that. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because that means that you, for the rest of your life, get to decide whether you're happy or not. And that brings me to the last point, is that your feelings aren't your boss. You are not a slave to your feelings. And looking back on that time when I was in a crash state of the fearful avoidant attachment style, I was so scared of my feelings, because I was afraid that they would tell me something that I didn't want to hear, but I had to do. So I was afraid that whatever feeling came up, it meant that I had to break up with Aryan, even though I didn't want to. And I felt so powerless over that, because my feelings just came up and I couldn't control that. I could only suppress them. But now I know that feelings are not your boss. And the fact that you don't feel good about something doesn't say anything about whether that thing is good or not, especially if you haven't healed trauma yet, if you haven't healed the fearful avoidant attachment style yet. Because it could very, very, very well be that you are just afraid of connection, that you are just afraid of allowing love in. And so your relationship will feel like something that doesn't feel good, but it's actually the fear of connection or the fear of allowing love in. And what helped me see this was when I saw this example in different areas of my life. So, for instance, if you have a very low self-esteem, you might look in the mirror, see your own face, and you might have a lot of negative emotions and a lot of negative feelings. Is that then absolute truth? No, it's not. Absolutely not. You can learn to love yourself, and I really hope you will. And when you start loving yourself more and more, your feelings will change. You will look at that same face in that same mirror, and you will have different feelings. And having those different feelings, loving yourself, having positive feelings, seeing your own beautiful face, you will have such a different experience in the world. And another example is money. If yeah, I love um, comparing these things to money because it's just something so vastly different. And sometimes when you compare it to money, it's like, oh well, yeah, that makes sense, duh. And then you can copy paste it back to love and relationships, where we tend to think in a very different way. So, for instance, it could be that money scares the bejesus out of you. Just thinking about money, always feeling like you don't have enough. Is that the truth? Is that the truth of money? No, it's not. You can change your money mindset. You can change the way you feel about money. You can change the way you think about money. And that will lead you to see other opportunities. That will lead you to have different solutions. When you think differently, when you feel differently about a thing, you will be different and act different and be in a different energy. And so when we get back to relationships, it might be that you don't feel good about your relationship, and it has nothing to do with your relationship. But it has to do with your fear of connection. It has to do with your fear of rejection, of abandonment. And so, what we tend to do when we are in the fearful avoidant attachment style phase of our lives, because you can heal this and then you won't have this attachment style anymore. But what we can do then is that we just see this very black and white. Like I said before, I don't feel good about this relationship, and I should follow my heart, and I should follow what feels good. And this doesn't feel good, so I have to break up. That is so black and white. There is so much nuance possible within that. So what I want you to do is, what exactly doesn't feel good? What are the parts or the moments that are scary, that make you feel contracted? And then see what trauma could be under that, what fear could be under that. And when I started looking at it this way, 99.9% of the things that I thought were absolutely my relationship, they were just trauma, old pain coming up and being triggered. And when I healed that, I felt differently. When I looked differently at my relationship, at Aryan, I felt differently about the relationship. And so I saw different things in him. And it still amazes me to this day how that works. That when, for instance, you are grateful for your partner, you will see so much, you will see a different person pretty much. And it is the same person, it is the same relationship, but your experience is the only thing that matters. And we sometimes want to escape the relationship to get a different experience, but we only have to change our thoughts, our feelings, and our old pain. We have to heal our old pain, and we can have a completely different experience in the same relationship, with obviously a healthy dynamic, a healthy foundation in the relationship. It is no use in trying to feel safe in an unsafe relationship. So there are so many things you can do to feel better about the relationship. And the couples that I interviewed 100 couples happily married for over 40 years for my first book. And the couples that I interviewed, they knew this. They knew that it was normal to not sometimes not feel so good about your relationship. So they made a point in actively seeking the good in their partner, actively um, admiring their partner. And for a lot of fearful avoidance, that feels very scary because then you're not paying attention to the real issues that are there. You might miss things. You are fooling yourself. And these are all very logical things to think, but the consequence of them, logical in the sense that it makes sense from the type of trauma you've endured and the attachment style you have, but the consequence of that is that your experience of this relationship is way unhappier than it can be. There is a very different relationship within the relationship you have now if you look at it differently, if you heal your pain, if you heal the fearful avoidant attachment style. You owe it to yourself and maybe even the relationship to see that version, to allow that version to be there and to make that feel very safe in your body. So no, don't just follow what feels good, because that is just a very simplistic way of explaining something that is complicated for a lot of people. If somebody says this, I mean, bless them, because truly that came probably from good intentions. But if we wouldn't have any pain, if we wouldn't have any trauma, if we wouldn't have any negative experiences with love or relationships or bonding or attachment, then maybe that might hold some ground. But that's not the case. That's not the case for, I think, 80% of the people on this planet. And so I think we have to not say this so easily, that we have to follow what feels good and have to follow our heart, because I think that has caused a lot of relationships to break up, marriages to break up, or get a divorce, because they were chasing a feeling that might feel good in that moment, but was maybe just a dopamine hit. So yeah, quite passionate about this, as you might notice, because I just want you to experience true happiness and experience what truly feels good in your body for you. And that just is more nuanced than this. So let me know in the comments below what you think of all this. Like I said, it might be a bit of a controversial topic, so let's talk about it. I would love to. And I have healing cards for you, which can definitely help you heal the fearful avoidant attachment style. And they will show you, they will reveal what it feels like to be healed and to make that feel more normal and more safe in your body. So find the link in the description below and you can download those. And yeah, I'm so happy you are here as always. And I will see you in the next one.